The Gospel reading comes from the book of Luke, chapter 13. At that very time there were some present who told him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. He asked them, "Do you think that because these Galileans suffered in this way, they were worse sinners than all the other Galileans? No, I tell you. But unless you repent, you will all perish as they did. Or those 18 who were killed when the tower of Siloam fell on them. Do you think that they were worse offenders than all the others living in Jerusalem? No, I tell you. But unless you repent, you will all perish, just as they did." Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it, and found none. So he said to the gardener, "See here, for 3 years I have come looking for fruit on this fig tree, and still I find none. Cut it down. Why should it be wasting the soil?" He replied, "Sir, let it alone for 1 more year, until I dig around it and put manure on it. If it bears fruit next year, well and good. But if not, you can cut it down." Towers collapsing, people dying, killings, people senselessly murdered, apparently. But somehow all of these things are wrapped up in people's minds as those which God has caused. They must have committed some great sin to have suffered this fate. And so Jesus says to them, "Do you think that they were any worse sinners than anybody else to have to suffer this way?" He says, "No. But if you continue on the path that you're on, you're going to go down just the same way that they did." So it seems that there is somehow divine retribution in play. It does seem somehow that God has caused all this. Tower of Siloam, we don't even really know what that is. This event that they're talking about, where Pilate had mingled the blood to sacrifices, that we don't even know about either historically. So let's contextualize this. Jesus stands before his disciples, before the Pharisees, and he says, "Do you think that the people in Bangladesh at Rana Plaza 2 years ago, when that building collapsed and killed 1,130 people, do you think that they were any more sinful than anybody else? Or what about the people of Columbine, or Aurora, or Sandy Hook, or Kalamazoo, or San Bernardino? Do you think that they were any worse than anybody else in this world, that they should have to suffer the way that they did?" And Jesus told them, "No, they weren't. But I will tell you, if you continue on the path that you are on, you are going to perish the same way that they did." What the heck does that mean? What kind of a threat is that? I think that's how we all hear it. But when it's contextualized, we can kind of go back and look at the events that led up to it. So let's go ahead and take Rana Plaza. This was a building that was permitted for 4 stories. The people who built it, the investors and whatnot, says, "You know what? Let's go ahead and throw 4 more stories on it." They had no permit for it. So they built 4 more stories on top of the original 4. It was all concrete. Metal, or steel rather, is expensive. If you're going to build in concrete, you need a lot of rebar, which is steel. A lot of it. Especially to hold weight, especially for a building that wasn't permitted to be that high. But, because it's expensive, they cut corners, and they didn't put enough steel in it. It was mostly just concrete on top. The building was rated for commercial use. It was supposed to be pretty much a mall. But they decided, we're going to make it industrial. We're going to put a textile factory up on those floors that really weren't supposed to be there in the first place. We're going to put heavy machinery up there to dye and spin and do everything that we need to for this clothing, and put a whole heck of a lot of people up there, even though they're not supposed to. Oh, and how about the architectural design, and when we do the testing to see how the weight should be distributed throughout the building, to see where all the pillars need to be. Well, we're going to have this industrial, so we're not going to put columns that are going to help to support the upper floors. We're going to leave more wide open space for the machines and the people. And we're not going to do the testing because, well, computers and software are expensive, so we're going to go ahead and cut corners there. and save some money for the people who own it. And the day before, when the people noticed this big crack in the side of the building, and the inspectors who came, who actually I think were investors in the project, who came and took a look after they'd evacuated the building and said, looks okay to me. So when people started freaking out and said, there is no way in heck I am going back in that building. And the owner said, okay, you're going to lose a month's pay if you don't go back in there. Well, think about that. A month's pay to poor people working in a Bangladeshi textiles factory. That's like telling us, we're not going to pay you for the next 3 years. Of course they wouldn't. And of course that crack in the cement was as bad as they had hoped it wasn't. And the building collapsed. And 1,130 people died. Not because God was punishing them for doing something heinous. Those people perished because certain people didn't do what they were supposed to. And this is the message that Jesus is teaching the people. If you don't do what you're supposed to, you're going to bring yourself down. It's not divine retribution. It's not punishment from God. If you don't take care of others, you're also not taking care of yourself, and therefore you are going to perish the same way that they did. See, we like to draw these correlations between everything. When we see these shootings, we say, we need gun control. When people are murdered, we say, take away their weapons. Punish them. Give them the death penalty. Give them life imprisonment, whatever. When we see people who are homeless, we say, we need better housing laws. We need more affordable housing. When we see people starving in the streets, we say we need economic justice, fair wages, so people can afford food or grow it in urban areas. We draw these correlations, but we're missing what is at the root of all of these things. Yes, they're important. Yes, I don't believe that any citizen has any need to own a freaking machine gun. Makes no sense to me. No, I don't understand why we grow food thousands of miles away and truck it over on polluting trucks over to here when we could grow our own food in our own backyard. No, I don't understand that. And I agree with those who say it's ridiculous. But there is something deeper at the root of all of these things. And the key is in Isaiah. Come to me, all who thirst. Why are you spending your money on things that don't even quench your hunger? Why are you spending your money on things that don't even make you happy? Why do you labor so hard for meaningless things? Isaiah is reminding the people of Israel who are exiled in Babylon that they have been exiled. They've gotten so used to life in Babylon that they forgot of any thought of going home. Everything was fine. They were fed, they were making money, they had jobs, everything was fine. Home? Totally forgot about that. But he was reminding them that that pang, that hunger that you sometimes feel inside when you're sitting alone, and you feel like something just isn't completely right, even though everything's going okay, but you still feel like something's missing and you're hungry for something more, he reminded them that is the hunger for a place that we have forgotten. We have forgotten where we came from, and we're completely oblivious to where we're going. We continue on this path. And Isaiah reminds those people that there is a place called home, and you will be called to go back there and to become the people that you were meant to be. Thirst no more. Hunger no more. Be fed. Have the real things that you need. Be the people that you were really meant to be, and that is the reminder that Isaiah gives to the people of Israel who had forgotten that they are exiled. How do we know we've forgotten that we're exiled? How do we know that we forget that the whole world has been turned upside down? When I get up in the morning, I pull out my cell phone, eat my bagel, drink my coffee, put it on CNN, and see what did I miss overnight. Rubio, Cruz, Trump, and all the way down in the secondary news, third from the top, not in the headlines, in the secondary news, was news of the Kalamazoo shooting. That tells me there is something severely screwed up about this world. When politics is put way up here and people dying is because we have become so desensitized to the loss of human life that it's completely ridiculous. So what do we do about it? What the heck can there be done? Well, Jesus, in his great wisdom, launches into this parable after talking about the towers falling and the people being killed. He launches into this parable that seems like another even stricter version of divine retribution, saying, you are worthless, I'm going to cut you down. I'm going to cut you off at the roots and throw you in the fire. But that's not what the parable is about. See, we often miss the point. The parable wasn't about the guy who came along and said, I'm going to cut you down and throw you away because you're worthless and you don't bear fruit. But the point was about the guy who said, no, wait. I'm going to nurture this. I'm going to raise it up. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take it under my wing. And I'm going to give it a chance. So you too, give it a chance. Let me work with this tree. Just give me 1 year. 1 year. If it doesn't work, hey, come by and cut it down. That is the lesson. That at the root of all of these heinous things that happen and all of the so-called solutions, gun control and economic justice and everything else that are important, that there is something deeper called empathy. Something deeper called compassion that can only be taught. And that Jesus calls us to be mentors to our youth, to raise them up in a way that they could not possibly fathom taking another's life. That they couldn't possibly fathom stepping on other people on the way to the top so that they can make money or putting other people's lives and well-being in danger. That is the key to this text. We're not called to enable people. We're called to empower. We're called to encourage. That's what the 1 year is about. We can't enable. We can't make people do things. We can't say, come on, man, you're better than this. And then have them just keep on doing what they're doing. Because eventually you have to cut bait. Say, okay, you know what? You had a year, been trying to help you, and you just don't want to be helped. So sometimes we do have to have tough love and set strong and healthy boundaries and say, okay, we got to let you go now. That is the entire key that we have to try. That we have to commit to that year or whatever that time period is. That we have to nurture our youth. That we have to encourage one another. That we have to empower one another so that we create a world where violence is not the way of life. Imagine the crime rates and all of the things that happen in the world. Now imagine if everybody was compassionate and everybody was empathetic. Well, murder would disappear. Everybody would make sure that their neighbors are fed so we wouldn't have any hunger. Right? Officials would make sure that everybody has a place to live, and people would be encouraged to work harder and to become educated and to get jobs. Therefore, they would be employed. Therefore, people would provide employment for them. Therefore, they would have homes. There would not be homelessness. Think of all the things that would disappear if but we would teach our youth to have compassion and empathy and love and respect for one another. That is Isaiah's message. That is Jesus' message. If we read anything from Jesus and see anything but that message, we're probably reading it wrong. If we think the message is about God punishing us for being knuckleheads, that ain't it. The point is that yes, we're knuckleheads, but we've got each other. And we will pick each other up, and we will encourage one another, and we will empower one another, and that is exactly what we're supposed to do. And as we do so, we will transform the world for the better, so that we can sit around with our grandkids. Say, remember the days? Remember when people used to kill each other over stupid things? I'm so glad that's done.